working on projects, whether it's a quilt or a garment, probably especially a garment or a handbag, there's always going to be an opportunity to turn a corner. There's a couple of things on the Jazz 2 that really help in that technique. The first thing that we're going to make sure is, of course, our machine setup. And I want to make sure that your needle sits in that center needle position of 3.5 and that you have the straight stitch selected. And we have a stitch length of about 2, you can go to 2.5. I usually try to do a little smaller stitch length. And what that does is I don't have as much thread in a sense that I have to watch to turn that corner. I think it's easier to turn a corner with a shorter stitch length. The other thing that you're going to make sure that you have engaged is that needle stop in the down position. That is actually crucial in turning the corner because then you have the ability to turn that corner. And then you can also make sure that you have the knee lift that will assist you in moving the presser foot into the up position as you turn that corner. So I'm going to align the edge of my fabric with the 1/4 inch marking on my bobbin cover plate. And I'm going to stitch down to the end of my fabric, but not all the way to the end. I want to stop about 1/4 inch from that corner so that I can turn that corner. And you could mark that if you would like, or you can, in a sense, trust your intuition that you're going to be at that 1/4 inch. And I'm going to rotate that, and I can see by the edge of my fabric, let's take a look at this, by the edge of my fabric, you can see that sitting right at that 1/4 inch line. So now I'm going to stitch down to the other corner. And as I approach the corner, what I always try to do is I actually slow my speed down just a little bit. And that's just, again, that's a personal preference. I find that I have an easier time guessing or instinctively knowing when to turn that corner. So I'm going to stop and I'm going to turn that corner and test. Now, you can see I'm a little long, right? I overshot that. That's okay. I'm just going to come back. And this is where I would use needle up, needle down, just to take one stitch to see if that helped me out, and guess what? That helped me out. One thing you don't want to do is, and I see it happen because I've done it myself in some instances, where you go past where you need to stop. You take your needle out of the fabric, lift your presser foot, and take your needle back. That put a stitch there, so that means if you're turning that corner, it's not going to be a crisp, clean corner. Also, back stitching. Try not to back stitch. Those threads add up in that corner, and they create bulk. And again, I over just a little bit, and that's okay. So I'm going to come back, and I'm just going to needle up, needle down, and rotate, and there I am at that 1/4 inch. And again, I try not to, as I said, I try not to backstitch, because every time you backstitch, you have to remember you have the initial stitching, the backstitch, and the forward, and that thread does build up. And I'm going to come to the end. I didn't start a 1/4 inch out, so I'm just going to stop roughly there, take my needle out of my fabric, trim my threads, and you can take a look at your corners that you made. Turned out very nice. Now, that was just a piece of fabric that I was stitching together. So a practical application would be top stitching around a pocket. And when I do something like that, what I would do is I would use something like an open toe foot, or in this case, actually the clear 1/4 inch foot, because I know I want to be a 1/4 inch away from that. You can use an edge joining foot. There are lots of other feet that you can use, but in this case, we're going to use the 1/4 inch foot. The foot selection is going to be dependent upon what type of project you are working on. And one of the other reasons that I use the 1/4 inch foot is I know that I want to stop a 1/4 inch from the edge of my pocket. If I look at that foot on the right-hand side, that 1/4 inch marking in the center aligns with the needle. This marking here, which is a 1/4 inch from the center marking. That's where I know I'm going to put the edge of my fabric to turn my corner. So I think it will make more sense if I place my fabric, if I stitch to the corner, excuse me. So we're going to stitch to the corner. And I'm just going to get rid of that thread so that doesn't block your view. That's one of the reasons I use the needle down. So as we come to the end, okay, so that's the marking that I want to watch, and when it hits that fabric edge right there, I'm going to turn my corner. Okay, so it looks like it's right there on that edge. I'm going to turn my corner, and I'm look pretty darn good, so I'm going to stitch to the other end. And again, the marking in the center aligns with the needle. The marking near the toe is 1/4 inch from the needle. So that gives me my indication of where I'm going to stop as I come to the next corner. So as I come to the next corner, I'm watching that marking to make sure that it aligns with the edge of the fabric, raise my presser foot, turn my corner. And as we come to the end, our top stitching is done. Needle out of the fabric, raise the presser foot, and trim our threads. And you can see how those corners turned out. Perfect. Now, you are limited on the 1/4 inch foot where your needle happens to sit. And you're guiding against the edge of that toe. So again, that's 1/4 inch. If I want something closer, that is where I would use the open toe presser foot. Again, you have the visibility to see where your edges are and where your corner is to turn that corner. So you have 3 options on the Baby Lock Jazz for turning corners for top stitching, and that is the standard presser foot, the 1/4 inch clear foot, and the open toe foot. So the Baby Lock Jazz 2 offers you many options for turning those corners in all the projects that require it.